It was always wonderful at my Uncle Silas's little house in the summer-time, with the pink maiden blush roses blooming by the door and the cream old glory roses blooming on the house wall, and the nightingales singing in the wood at the end of the garden, and the green peas coming into flower. But it was also wonderful in the winter-time, when we could sit by the fire of ash logs, roasting potatoes in their jackets, with my Uncle Silas hotting up his elderberry wine over the fire in a little copper pot shaped like a dunce's cap. "Never been able to make up me mind yet," he would say, "whether it tastes better hot or whether it tastes better cold." "Then it's about time you did," his housekeeper would say. "You've been tasting years and new." My Uncle Silas's housekeeper was, I always thought, a very tart old stick of rhubarb. She wouldn't let you drop crumbs on the floor, and I had to be very careful as I skinned the hot potatoes. She and my Uncle Silas were like flint and steel, clashing against each other, always making sparks. The strange thing was that the more the sparks flew, the better he seemed to like it. They always seemed, I thought, to urge him on to bigger and better lies. So also did the hot elderberry wine. "You've heard talk," he said to me one evening as we sat over hot wine and hot potatoes, "about the time I knocked Porty Sanders into Kingdom Come." "You told me that," I said. "You heard talk," he said, "about the race I had with Goffy Windsor." "You told me that," I said. "But I ain't told you, have I," he said, "about the ettin' match I had with Joey Wilkes at the Dog and Duck one winter? That were—" "Eating and drinking," his housekeeper snapped. "All you think about is eating and drinking. All you think about is your blessed belly." "Well, damn it," Silas said, "I wouldn't be much catch without it, would I?" She gave a great snort of righteousness at that, and my Uncle Silas, winking at me, pushed a poker into the fire and started to turn the roasting potatoes over. "There'll be another half hour yet," he said. "Just time for me to tell you about Joey Wilkes and this here ettin' affair." He poured himself another glass of warm elderberry wine, leaned back, and started to describe what kind of man Joey Wilkes, a shoemaker, was. "Aye, big man, about 18 stone, shoemaker, come from Allington," he said. "Good craft Joey was, could make a good pair of shoes, but a terrible boaster." "Of course you never have been," his housekeeper said. "If I can do a thing, I do it, and I say so," Silas said. "But if I can't do it, I don't do it, and I don't boast about it, like Joey did." "Well, some do believe you," she said, "but I doubt if Gabriel will when the time comes." "We ain't talking about Gabriel," my Uncle Silas said. "We're talking about Joey Wilkes, and I'm telling you Joey was a terrible boaster. And what he were always a boasting about were etting, and when he weren't a boasting about etting, he were boasting about drinking. He were just like that general over in America I heard about once. He was always boasting, firstest with the mostest." "Keep on," she said. He kept on, and presently he was telling me of how Joey Wilkes had boasted one evening in the Dog and Duck how he'd eaten a leg of pork, half a bushel of potatoes, 6 pounds of sausages, a dishful of baked onions, a big Yorkshire pudding, and about a gallon of apple sauce, washed down with about 10 quarts of beer, for his dinner the previous Sunday. "Elastic belly, Joey, that's what you got, I told him," my Uncle Silas said. "Elastic belly and elastic mind. Always stretching it. I bet all you ever had was a mutton chop and a basin of cold custard." Joey, my Uncle Silas said, didn't like this much. In fact, He very much resented it. "If you're a-calling me a liar, Silas," he said, "you'd better look." "I ain't calling you a liar, Joey," my Uncle Silas said. "All I'm saying is you didn't do it, and if you did do it, nobody never seed you." Joey got very flustered and blustered about this, and at last my Uncle Silas said, "Well, if you're set on it, Joey, my old sport, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll challenge you to an etting match." "Pah!" Joey said. "Etting and drinking," Silas said. "Hot food or cold food, which you like, and plenty of beer. And a bet on the side if you've a mind to." "How much?" "I'll give you," my Uncle Silas said, 3-1 in sovereigns." Several times, as he told me this, he renewed his warm elderberry wine, and once he gave the potatoes a turn in the red-hot ashes. "Well," he said, "when we finally got down to it, we decided we'd eat just the same as Joey said he'd eaten that Sunday. Pork and taters and sausage and baked onions, and apple sauce and baked pudding, and plenty of beer." "That I don't disbelieve," his housekeeper said. "The landlady at the Dog and Duck cooked the grub," Silas said, "and we had the match in the back parlour. Of course, by the time the word got round, there was a lot of money on it. Big bets. Taffs and all started laying a lot of big wagers." "Mostly on you, I warrant," his housekeeper said. "Well, that were the funny thing," Silas said. "They were mostly on Joey." He took another drink of elderberry wine, smacked his lips, and said he wasn't quite sure, but he was very near damned if it didn't taste better hot after all. "Well, that started me thinking," he said. "I started thinking that if the money were on Joey, and Joey didn't win, then it'd be a fly thing if I had a little bit on it myself." "Trust you," his housekeeper said, and now I too had something to say. "How did you decide the winner?" I said. "Was it the one who ate most, or the one who stood up the longest?" "Well, as it happened," my Uncle Silas said, "it were the one what stood up." Refreshed with elderberry wine, he went on to describe how the food was laid out in the back parlour of the Dog and Duck. 2 big legs of pork, and another in the kitchen oven, in reserve, and big dishes of onions and potatoes and apple sauce and pudding, and with it 2 barrels of beer. "And me at one end of the table," he said, "and Joey at the other, like David and Goliath." "How long did it last?" I said. "I'm a-coming to that," he said, "in a jiffy. What I just going to tell you about were the beginning. Joey were a very big man, and he rushed in like some old sow a trough, etting with both hands. Oh, very big man, Joey was, very big man. I had no manners." He paused for a little more refreshment, wiping his mouth on the back of his hand, a little sadly, I thought, this time. "Well, very big in the belly," he said, "but not," he went on, tapping his head, "very big up here." He went on then to tell us how he and Joey were eating for about 8 hours, or it might have been even 9 hours. He couldn't justly remember. Anyway, it was a tidy while, he assured us. Then, just as they were well on their way with the 3rd leg of pork and the 2nd barrel of beer, he thought he saw Joey showing signs of filling up a little. "He was a-getting very dropsical about the eyes," he said. "Uncommon dropsical, more like a pickled cabbage. So I started asking for another leg of pork." "Good heavens," I said, "where did you put it all?" "Well, to tell you the truth," he said, taking a long, slow, deep swig of elderberry, "I were putting most of it in a bag." The truth, his housekeeper started saying. "I wonder the word don't scorch your lips. My lord, I don't want to be with you when you meet Gabriel that day. I were a thin little chap at the time, my Uncle Silas went on, quite unconcerned, looking at the fire through the dark red rosiness of his glass. And I got this here bag sewn inside the top of me whisker. Then I had a big serviette round me neck, and the bag dropping down between me legs. And all I had to do... All right for the food, I said, but what about the beer? Oh, the beer never worried me, he said. That's a true word if I ever heard one, his housekeeper said. Well, it were all going very smooth, Silas said. When all our pop, I could see Joey were done for. He'd been going very purple for about an hour, but all of a sudden he started to go very yeller. A very funny yeller. Then he went stiff and white, just like a cold beast in's custard. He looked just like a dead un. The prospect of a dead Joey Wilkes seemed to scare people, my Uncle Silas said, and everybody started running about, trying to get Joey outside. Terrible thing, my Uncle Silas said. Couldn't lift him. He drank sadly again. Must have weighed 20 stone or more, with all the grub and beer inside him, he went on. Couldn't lift him. Took every man jack in the room to get him up, and out in the fresh air. And I suppose you, his housekeeper said, sat there as cool as a cucumber and watched them do it. I did, he said. There were nothing wrong with me. He leaned forward to poke at the roasting potatoes. As the poker touched the first of them, I could hear the crackle of the crisp burnt jacket. Well, I say I sat there, he said. I did until I got a chance to nip the bag down the cellar steps. Gabriel, Gabriel, his housekeeper said, raising her hands to heaven. Gabriel, I hope you're listening. Then I went outside, Silas said, and there were Joey laid out cold. Dead? I said. Halfway, he said. He paused for a few moments, shaking his head sadly, taking the opportunity to refresh himself again with a slow mouthful of wine. First time I ever see what they were doing to poor old Joey that day. What were they doing? I said. Buttering his belly, my Uncle Silas said. Only way to get a swelling down. Had to keep buttering on it for 2 more days. Gabriel, Gabriel, his housekeeper said, raising her hands again. I hope you're listening. I hope you're taking it down. Of course you can use lard, my Uncle Silas said to me airily, but buttering on it's better. Calmly, one by one, he started to take the roasting potatoes from the fire. Innocently, with virtuous care, he filled his glass with warm, dark wine. Solemnly, he raised the glass to heaven. Your very good health, he said. Gabriel, me boy.